Welcome to the show, everyone. Today we have a very special guest, and she's the Mayor of Mississauga, Mayor Carolyn Parrish. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Robin, for having me.
I voted for you gladly in the election last year, and I'm seeing a lot of amazing things. I'm seeing a lot of good ideas come from you, Carolyn. And this topic, obviously, the focus of this episode today is going to be on your growth vision for the city of Mississauga. Mississauga already is, I think, right around 800,000. I think people can debate, how big the population is. Is it 750? Is it 800,000? But it's growing, and it's in the top 10, of city populations in Canada, and it's big in comparison even across North America. Before we get into your growth vision, Carolyn, of which you have many ideas and initiatives, let's talk about the first 6 months in office. What were some of the quick wins?
Quick win was I used strong mayor powers once and changed CAOs. We had a bit of a controversial one before that was rather combative with our attempts to get out of the region and what was going on there. So I changed that one person. And I chose a gentleman who'd been with Mississauga for 20 years. He'd been a commissioner for 15 or 20 years, 17 years. And everybody loves him. And it's just been peace in the valley ever since. So that was one of the first things I did. Secondly, I guess about 10 days after I was sworn in, we called our first housing task force meeting with 18 of the top developers in Southern Ontario to say, why are we stagnating? Why aren't we building up to our limits? And that was fun. It was really good because the first meeting, they told us everything that was going wrong in our planning department. And we were all sort of sitting there with our heads down, but we made a lot of changes right from that first meeting. So we've had two ever since. The third meeting we had Minister Calandra, who said he was going to come for 10 minutes and stayed for 2.5 hours and had a ball. He really enjoyed it. He liked what we were doing. So that was what my concentration was. Also, going into the budget, we got rid of transit fares for seniors over 65 completely. So we're going to get a few of them off the road, probably a good thing. And we also gave them free admissions to our community centers for certain activities like swimming and exercise rooms, because it's good to get them out of the house and have them socialize. So the police budget is a bit difficult. Mississauga pays 62% of that, and Brampton pays 38%. It's the biggest increase in a police budget in North America ever. And so we're trying to fight that, but we're not having an easy time of it. But that's the first 6 months in a nutshell.
There's a lot to do, and there's still a lot more to do. Will that conversation come back on the table, do you think, about dissolving the Peel region?
Not in the immediate future, not as long as the Tories are in charge at Queen's Park. I think they took a bit of a walloping over saying yes and then saying no. And if I had a solution for them, I would say stop basing the division of resources on MPAC, which is evaluations of the buildings that you have and the property you have in your city. We're a very progressive city. We're about a 58-42 split between residential is higher, but we keep a high industrial commercial base. So they take a big tax load for us. And so when we do the evaluations with the region, we really get hit hard. We get 50 to 60% of all the costs. So I would suggest to the Premier, if he wins the next election, which sounds like he's going to call one soon, he should just divide it on population. We got more people, they've got more people, we split all our bills, and we just walk away happy.
Proportionate.
But that's what I'm hoping he will do.
Okay, so let's get into your growth vision for Mississauga for the next 5 years. There's a lot to talk about. It's exciting. I think you were quoted as saying something like, Mississauga, the downtown can be quite boring.
It's terribly boring. Don't say quite boring. You're being very generous.
Okay, so first on the docket, I think you said you want to introduce a school in the city center. There's no school in the city center. So can you tell us more about that?
Well, it's interesting because Hazel was a wise lady. When we bought the land and leased it to Sheridan to build their two buildings, she managed to buy an extra 5 acres. One piece 3 acres, one piece 2 acres. We bought it for $1 million an acre. It is now valued at $50 million an acre.
It makes sense. So all the condo developers, right?
That's right. We would love a developer to buy the 3 acre piece, build his 2 towers, and put an elementary school in the podium. Because if you come into the city between 8 and 8:30 in the morning, there's yellow buses everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of children living in the city center. A lot of people
Hmm.
in the condominiums come from countries where high-rise living is quite normal, and they're quite happy with it. But kids can't walk to school. And I think if we're a real city center and we are welcoming families into our city center, we have to have a school here.
Yeah.
So I'm very keen on that. I'm also very keen, and we're looking at some rough diagrams for this, is getting a conference center in front of the LAC,
Hmm.
cutting out. We have two east-west roads in front of City Hall, between City Hall and LAC. We're going to cut out 2 lanes, expand the property a bit, and see if we can get someone to bid on building a conference center and a hotel there. And with a hotel comes some decent restaurants, because we've got fast food all over the place. When one particular good restaurant we've got closes for 2 weeks in the summer, everybody wanders the streets wondering what to do.
Yeah.
So we want to provide them with a couple of really good restaurants. I also had the original architect who built the LAC 50 years ago, designed it, have a look at it with our staff, and we can go from 1,100 seats, which is small fry, to about 1,680. I'm getting a report on that next Friday. So I'm pretty excited about that, because then you can start bringing in larger acts.
Hmm.
If you build the conference center too with a more progressive and exciting LAC venue, I think that enlivens the downtown. And
Absolutely.
Metalworks,
People coming from outside of the city into the city.
right?
Yeah.
And Metalworks, which is currently on Mavis, is
Hmm.
moving into the whole north wing of the LAC this year.
Mm.
So it's going to become a real music center for us.
That's just amazing. There's so many changes. For viewers of the show who don't know what that is, that would be the Living Arts Center, LAC.
Yep.
You've also teased a sports arena that could house as many as 7,500 seats. Where would it go, Carolyn?
Well, interestingly,
Yeah.
I shouldn't talk about it too much because I don't want to scare off the owners. But we have a gorgeous spot. I don't know if you've ever gone to the little Go Track. It's on
No.
the north part of Rathburn, right hugging up against Huron, Ontario.
Okay.
There's a perfect location there.
Ooh.
And the bus terminal is going to be moved to right across the road when the LRT goes in. And so you could just have crowds of people getting off the LRT, going into the stadium where you could have the Argos practicing. You could have a soccer team, a Premier League soccer team. We have all kinds of stuff going on in that corner that we're working on.
That's really exciting. So things are shaping up there. I'm sure very early talks about a
You know,
potential
it's one of
sports
the
arena.
bad things. I've been a counselor here for 13 years, and I've wanted to do these things for 13 years. And we've
Yeah.
just never been in the place to do it and never had the council support. And we've got the downtown councilor, John Kovac's fantastic. The deputy mayor, Matt Mahoney's fantastic.
Hmm.
We've got a system working now that I think we're going to get all this accomplished, and it's not going to cost the taxpayers 2 cents, actually.
That's exciting. Condos. If someone drives through the city center in Mississauga, if you look in the skyline, you see cranes everywhere, like never before. What's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years? I know that all the parking lots around Square One Mall are being redeveloped and basically are going to be condos soon, right?
Well, actually, I'm the committee that we've got, the task force, is a bit more pessimistic. If we don't do some
Okay.
dramatic changes, we're going through a slump of at least 2 years where there'll be no new applications. The cranes that you see applied 5 years ago,
Okay.
and they're just completing their projects.
Yeah.
So, with the high interest rates, difficulty getting trades, and generally malaise as far as building is concerned, everybody's
Hmm.
coming to a screeching halt. So our recommendations coming out of the task force are going to be fairly dramatic. Sneak preview, we're really lowering development charges. We're lowering property tax on purpose-built rentals. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming forward that Minister Calandra from the province has looked at it and said, this is a beautiful blueprint for the rest of the province. And I said, yes, if you step forward and help us with some really good grants for building, it's a perfect formula. So when that gets released, you're going to see some sensational changes.
That's exciting. I think it's being released, that housing task force report, at the end of this month, right? In Jan?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. What will come out more broadly in terms of Mississauga, the entire city? Is there going to be more investment dollars coming in to build detached townhouses? I'm curious.
We're looking at a mix. I think the
Okay.
best type of development has a mix. Some people, we've got some buildings down here now that have townhouses blocked into the fronts of the taller condos. We need to get mixed housing everywhere. We also need to get mixed costs of housing. You have a lot of people, families that earn $100,000 a year can't afford a house. They can't carry the mortgage. They can't afford the down payment. I was just meeting with a group this morning that has some very interesting things they're going to do on Ninth Line, which is mixed housing, mixed costs. Starts off at rental, rental to purchase. We've got to look at more of that. And they're looking at two pieces of land on Confederation Parkway and around the downtown. And when I talked to them this morning about what we're going to be doing with the DCs and the property tax, they got very excited. So I
Okay.
think you're going to see changes, and we're going to give a lot of breaks to different types of housing. We're not discouraging any of it. Semis, townhouses, stacked towns, condos. There has to be something for everybody.
That'll be great to see because there's not a lot of empty space for development in Mississauga. Mississauga is a very developed city. I've heard you talk about rezoning some commercial land potentially. Can you tell us more about that strategy?
If you go up Huron, Ontario, which is right where the LRT is going to go, on both sides of Huron, Ontario, when you go north of Matheson, right up to the Brampton line, it's all zoned office. It's been zoned office for many years.
Yep.
And with the stroke of a pen, it can be changed to mixed use.
Yep.
The only way the pen gets stroked is you have to have the developers come in and say, I'm willing to put a mid-rise building in there, a residential, maybe rental building. And then, yes, you can do some office space around it, or you can do some commercial space. We want that corridor to stop being a big wasteland. We want res in there, and we also want, when the LRT traffic goes by, we want stores along the edge. We want people to see that it's an enlivened part of the city. So yes, we're running out of large Greenland types, not Greenland, what do you call that? Big subdivision spaces. We don't have those. We have some on Ninth Line. But what you also have is the old days, they built apartments that had big hunks of green all around them. They're starting to fill those in now. The Caniffs are doing it. A few of the other ones are doing it. They've got a building in the middle of a huge patch of grass that nobody uses. So they're starting to tuck buildings in between, and they're starting to downsize their parking lots. And we're going to have more infill that way.
Well, that'd be good to see. This is a good segue. Speaking about the LRT, the light rail train that'll be coming through all the way from Port Credit all the way up to Brampton. When is the plan to finish that? Have you heard news?
I wish that was in my hands. It's not.
Exactly.
I haven't seen an LRT finish on predicted time yet
Never.
anywhere ever in Ontario. So I assume it's going to take a bit longer than they suggested. But they're doing a really good job. When you look at the setup they've got, people will be able to drive over the tracks at intersections. We are in charge of upgrading some of the stations, which we're doing. I'm very hopeful that the loop will finally come through the downtown.
I was excited to see the approval come through.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, and we've got a big model of the whole city in the Great Hall downstairs.
Oh,
And we have little dreams of when the LRT is going to put a little train on there that goes around the loop with a light on it.
that's great.
It
I'll have
really
to come by and
attracts.
visit. That's cool.
It attracts kids. Kids go there and they press their noses to the glass.
Yes.
But it also, every time I go down there, there's an older person looking,
Yeah.
and I walk over and I say, "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for my building." Well, I said, "What street is it on?" So then we find it, and they get all excited. We're doing some really exciting things. We've opened up the whole down lower floor of the city. We've moved the clerk's department down there. We've moved planning desks down there. We're putting in a big conference room that the public can come in. They don't have to pay to rent it. They just can book it. And so we're enlivening the downstairs. We've reopened the little Sea Cafe that was down there. It's jammed.
Great. It's a lot more inviting now.
And we've also agreed that everybody comes back to work 3 days a week.
That's good. It's good for culture, right?
It is. It is.
Yeah. It's good to see people. So the loop itself, LRT is going all the way up here in Ontario. Just to clarify for everyone, then I think it'll go down Rathburn. How does that work, and how far?
It'll go across
down
Rathburn. I think it'll go down Confederation.
Okay.
And then loop around somewhere, whether it's Webb Drive or further south of that, and then it'll continue down south on here, Ontario. right into
Awesome.
core credit.
So the next question here is, how do you envision the business landscape evolving in the next 5 years in Mississauga in terms of diversification, in terms of the type of businesses you want to attract and help to build and grow?
We expanded our what we call Pill Hill, which is in Meadowvale. A lot of the drug companies, when they were having lots of referenda on Quebec separating, a lot of them moved from
Mm.
Montreal, which was the center, and they've moved here.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of life sciences. We're a big center for that. We have a lot of Fortune 500 companies, but we also are a net gain of
Mm-hmm.
jobs. More people come into Mississauga to work than go out of Mississauga to work. So I don't see that trend slowing down. And we're the third largest city in Ontario, but we are also the most productive as far as business and finance is concerned. We carry a lot of the province on that. So I know Toronto's the big brother next door, big sister, but we're holding our own. We're fighting above our weight. So I don't expect that to stop. We have two universities here. We've got Sheridan, we've got UTM, and we're producing a lot of qualified people to work in a lot of high tech jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a nice city to work in. Everybody that comes here to look to bring a head office here, they say it's really a comfortable city. It's not as crowded. It's not as traffic isn't as bad. People they have good access to people who can live down here and work here. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we're still going to more than carry our share.
Oh, any other growth initiatives, Mayor, that you want to implement to close the gap
Well,
and making Mississauga a more exciting city?
I think that's enough. I've only got a year and a half in this term to go. And if you vote for me again, I've got 4 more years. And then, good heaven's sakes, I've got to retire and give somebody else a turn.
The current population, it seems like it's right around 800,000, but how is that projected to look like in, let's say, the year 2050? Are there projections?
No, I haven't seen any projections, but
Okay.
I do know that we've had a couple of bum years where we've gone down about 17,000. I think we're closer to 750. But
Okay.
there's a census being taken in May of 2026, and that'll give you a better picture of how things are going. And you've got not as many here, but you have some people who never show up on the census. So we're between 750 and 800. But I know there was between this last census and the one before, we lost 17,000 people. And I think it's because we're a little bit expensive.
Mm.
Our rents are a little bit higher.
Yep.
And if all the changes that I've learned from our task force, and they're not my ideas, they're the ideas of the people who do the building. If all those come into play, I think you're going to see a nice boom in housing, and we've got more supply, then the costs go down a little bit. And I think that's going to make us a much more attractive city.
Yeah, that sounds great. Have you formed like a business council or a trade council, like
We
entrepreneurs,
have an
business people in Mississauga?
We have an economic development council
Okay.
or committee, and we are developing that. I think John Kovac's going to be on that, and Matt Mahoney, and we're expanding that into one that has a larger business persons on it to contribute. Right now, it's been pretty much in City Hall, and we're
Mm-hmm.
expanding that out. I'm going to continue the housing task force. We're going to meet at least once a year just to touch base, see if there's any concerns that they want addressed. I've got a seniors council. We had our first meeting. That's where we got the idea about free transit, although I
Mm-hmm.
already had it, and the access to community centers, which their tax dollars built. So we're trying to bring in as many citizen community or committees as we can. There's a motion on this council meeting for tomorrow to bring in a stormwater advisory council and
Mm-hmm.
put citizens on it that have areas of expertise that could help us. We've got a really good staff on stormwater, and we've got stormwater tax that's been in since 2016, and we're doing well with it. But we're having these horrible floods and rains. And sometimes, if you have a citizens committee looking at things, they can come up with ideas that the experts can't. It's a silly thing to say, but it happens. And also, they can look at temporary measures. For
Mm-hmm.
example, a large park with a large green space, you can lower it, and it can collect water before it hits where the residents are. So, we're hoping that motion passes tomorrow. Chris Fonseca is sponsoring it, and
Mm-hmm.
Dasco seconded it, and because they've been hit hardest with the floods. So I'm pretty sure it'll pass tomorrow. And then when they do the interviews to put the citizens on, they're looking for people who have a background or an interest in it.
That sounds great.
So
Is there a typical week for you, Mayor Parrish? Can you describe what the typical week would be for you as a mayor of
today
Mississauga?
was not a typical day. A typical week is Wednesday mornings we have council or general committee. Thursdays every second Thursday we go to the region. We have committees, some committees that I sit on, but a lot of meeting with the developers, a lot of meeting with people who have concerns from large groups. I met with Ahmadiyya Muslims this morning. I met with one of the developers who's looking at moving into Mississauga that wasn't on our committee. And then, because it's not a normal day, my husband, who's retired, is doing indoor golf somewhere with his
Okay.
cronies. So I have two bulldogs, and one of them's just a baby. So I thought, I better go home and let them out.
Yeah.
I went home. They both stepped out on the patio, looked at how cold it was, and came back in. So I came back home, back here. It's a Freudian slip. It feels like home here. But
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I meet
Second
with
home.
a lot. I meet with a lot of people.
Mhm.
I gather ideas from them. I prepare agendas. I do a lot of correspondence myself, a lot of emails myself. Take on a few battles with newspapers and others. No, I'm just busy all day. And by the time I get home, it's after 6. I've left instructions on my chef in the kitchen, which is the husband.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting stuff prepped. I finish it. I have dinner. And then I've spent the last couple of weeks rewatching Downton Abbey. All the episodes.
Rewatching. This is the second time. All the episodes.
Yes.
Wow.
And it was
That's
just
great.
so relaxing. And I can sit and jot down notes on stuff and kind of have my mind on two things at once.
I heard it's a good show.
I sleep about 5 hours a night, maybe, if I'm lucky.
There's just so much to do, right? Like,
no, it's just not that. It's while I'm asleep, my brain is still working. It's still thinking, I've got to do this, this, and this. I keep a notebook beside my bed. But no, I'm busy, and I like it. I'm not complaining. Please don't misinterpret. I love being busy.
Well, thanks for that glimpse into the life of the mayor of Mississauga. There's lots going on, and you have a very big personal life too. What was it like working with Hurricane Hazel McCallion? I'd love to know.
She was fantastic. She was an amazing lady. When I was a member of Parliament, I used to have lunch with her maybe once or twice a year. And you'd go into a restaurant, everybody in the kitchen would come out to see her. Like, she was so loved.
She's the queen, right?
Yeah, that's right. And she was also the person who made it a rule for our city as we developed to keep a 60-40 split with commercial, industrial, and residential so that the commercial industrial would provide jobs, which it's doing, and would also supplement taxes so that the homeowners weren't paying as much as they are in other cities. She was an amazingly interesting person.
Mm-hmm.
We went through a little lull with the inquiry, and when she retired, I got a call. Had to be a week after she retired, and she says, "What are you doing for breakfast tomorrow morning?" I said, "I have a feeling you have plans." And she said, "Yes, meet me at Bobby's in Streetsville." So I went up, and I thought, "Oh, I'm going to get it all the way up there about the inquiry." She never even brought it up, but she had been watching what I was doing as the councillor for Ward 5, and she said, "It's about time somebody paid attention to Malton." So she'd been following all the changes I'd made up there. And we met, I would say, once a month for breakfast until COVID hit. And that was kind of sad because I really enjoyed talking to her and relearning things that I'd learned watching her before when I was first on council for one term with her. But just an amazing lady. And I don't think any mayor, well, I know Bonnie after when she was elected, if they'd go into a room together, everybody would flock Hazel and Bonnie be, "I'm the mayor." But no, that's okay. She was great. Bonnie loved her. We all loved her. She was a really amazing lady.
It's just a great opportunity to work with someone like Hazel. Can you tell us more about Malton and what experiences, what lessons learned have you taken from Malton and applying it across the city of Mississauga?
Most important thing I learned in Malton was it's a really difficult socioeconomic area.
Yes.
So I teamed up with Nav Bhatia, super fan.
Oh, okay.
And he took we had a 4 3-on-3 basketball courts up there in Paul Coffey Park.
Mm-hmm.
He came in and partnered with the city, and he built a full outdoor NBA court.
Oh, good on him.
and refurbished the 3-on-3s. And so far, it's the only outdoor court, and it's been there 5 or 6 years now. It's the only one that's never been vandalized.
Oh.
And it's a rough little town. Like Malton is not for the faint of heart. So it was really a godsend. Kids used it, adults use it. It's busy all the time. We don't allow it to be booked. It's you go there with a basketball and you play, and your
Yep.
people come and play with you. The second thing I did was there was an unused indoor swimming pool, almost Olympic size, attached to Lincoln Alexander High School,
Hmm.
which is a horrible waste of space. So
Mhm.
we designed a youth hub for it, and
Mm.
we got 6 million out of the region, 5 million out of the city, which turned into another 5 million. We got a million from a donor. By the time we were all finished, it was $17.5 million. We
Mhm.
turned it into a youth hub. And how we designed it, we took 10 kids from Lincoln and 10 kids from Ascension, and we made them a board of directors.
Oh, that's great to empower
So
the people.
they
That's
put in
awesome.
what they wanted. They
Yeah,
designed what they needed.
that's cool.
Metalworks came and designed a recording studio there.
Mhm.
They've actually recorded some songs that are being played on the radio. So
Oh.
we're not quite sure who's going to make the money on this and what's going to happen. We're feeding it back into the youth hub, and we named it after Jonathan Davis,
Mhm.
who was a young man, totally innocent, walking out of the building in that big shootout where there were two gangs, one from Rexdale
Yeah.
and one from Malton, and he
Yeah.
died. He was
Ouch.
shot on the spot. So we named it after him, but it's just been fantastic. We've had, in the first 12 months, there were over 90,000 visits. And we
Wow.
also
That's great.
feed
Yeah.
about 200 kids a day in there. We have a teaching kitchen, and we have kids that get their food handling certificates,
Mhm.
and they cook for their colleagues. And the kids who can afford to bring a lunch come with their friends, and the ones that can't go and get stuff out of the little window into the
Yeah.
kitchen, and everybody's comfortable with it. Nobody feels like they're the poor kid. And then upstairs we have mental health, occupation, drug, all those counselings that the kids want. Once they get
Mhm.
comfortable downstairs, then it's kind of like a big family place. And if they
Mhm.
need help, they go upstairs and they don't feel odd about it. So we're building a second one at Glen Forest. We
Okay.
just tore down their swimming pool.
Yeah.
And on that location, we're going to have, again, Chris Fonseca is having students from the closest high schools, which
Mhm.
would be Glen Forest and whatever the close Catholic school is, sit on a board of directors, look at the plans we had in Malton, go up and visit it, see what they'd like to change, or see if they want to just duplicate it the way it is. And I'm hoping if I win another term, we'll do one down in Clarkson. We're just picking areas where the kids really need a place.
That's all very positive. That's just
Oh, yeah,
amazing.
it's wonderful.
So
We've had
when
people sorry,
sorry?
we've had people visit from Queen's Park that it blows their minds.
Oh my God.
And this is
It's a
where the
model
money
that you
should
can
be
use in
going.
other cities, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's just great. What legacy, Carolyn? I know we're looking very far out because you're looking
No,
at a
we're not.
second
Not
term,
that
possibly a
far.
third. Okay. What legacy do you want to leave for the city of Mississauga and the people of
Well, I
Mississauga?
want I want people to be comfortably housed. I want housing for people of all income levels to be available here in our city.
Hmm.
I want the city center, the downtown core to be enlivened and exciting, and people in the arts community love it. They want all these changes. I want at least 3 hubs built, and I want a good working relationship with the whole population so they feel comfortable in our city. We're
Hmm.
very multicultural,
Hmm.
and when we have marches and we have vigils and we have all that stuff here, it's never violent. We have mutual respect amongst a very diverse community.
Yeah.
I want to leave it like that. I,
Yeah.
I love it. And
That's what makes the
so,
city so great, so multicultural. There's so
yeah,
many different people. Yeah.
yeah. And it's not, I hate the word tolerate because that means I'm putting up with you. We don't have tolerance here. We have acceptance and
Yeah.
working together. And I think it's
Yeah.
much, much better.
Yeah. Agree. Um, is there a life after mayor of Mississauga? Are you looking at, for example, provincial politics, returning to federal politics? What's the plan?
No way, no how. I'll go back on a couple of boards. I'd love to go back on the food bank board, which I've been on.
Yeah.
I would love to go back on areas that I can serve the public without a formal political stand. But I'd like to do one more term. And because of my age, which unfortunately is getting on, I think the reason I left federal politics was, first of all, I always wanted to be a counselor. Secondly, after 13 years, it was time for somebody else to take a turn. So obviously, if you stay in these jobs too long, you're very excited at the beginning, you get a lot accomplished, and then things get to be routine. And I don't want that
Hmm.
to happen. So I'll probably go back on the Mississauga Food Bank Board and a few other things, but I have no intentions of doing anything other than this. It's the best job in the world, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, counselor, best job in the world.
That's
Love it.
awesome.
You get stuff done. It doesn't take forever, and then being mayor is even better.
You get to work with the people, and you see your impact in the community, and people come up to you and say, "Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for making it happen." I bet, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes I think they're going to be a little more grateful when they start seeing a lot of changes down here, or
Yeah.
not grateful, but excited. And I think that's what we're looking for.
It'll be exciting. For the aspiring politicians who are listening in, you got your start as a teacher. You were teaching classes and students. How did you make that leap, Mayor, from the school to politics? Like we'd love to know. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I had a couple of daughters, and they were in a local elementary school, and the parents were invited in during the day to see some sex ed films that they were going to show to the grade
Oh,
threes.
oh my goodness, grade
And
threes.
I used to teach sex ed. I taught family studies and English at Broomthorpe Collegiate. And I looked at the cans. I watched the films. They were awful. And then I watched the labels on the cans said grade 8 to 12, or say grade 12 or 11 to 12. And they were showing them to grade 3. So I had a little meltdown.
Yeah.
And I called the Board of Ed and talked to the superintendent. And I was breathless in what they were doing. So then I started going to the school board meetings, and I thought, gee, this is interesting. I could do this because I was a stay-at-home mom for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Polish background, you stay at home, or your mother gives you a real hard time. So I was home with the girls for when they were quite little. But school board you could do part-time. It was in a field I was interested in, which was education.
Hmm.
But after 2 terms, I decided there's something more interesting going on somewhere. So I decided to run Nando Unica, which was a big mistake. He beat me. And then I did the nomination for the Liberals in 92
Yeah.
and had the absolute pleasure working with Jean Chrétien for 12 years. And then the 13th year, Paul Martin came along, and I was ready to leave anyway. He and I kind of locked horns a couple times. But Chrétien was an angel. When I had my inaugural meeting at the Living Arts Center, he sent a video.
Oh.
And the opening statement in the video, was Caroline was in Ottawa. She was a handful. And I thought, oh, this is going to get bad. But it was lovely after that.
Oh, that's so nice. It's just a tremendous career, right? And how you're able to launch it. So if you were to do it today, if there's an aspiring politician now, how do they go about it? How do they get started?
Well, you do a lot of community service first. You do
Okay.
volunteer work so you get to know people and find out if you can get along with people. Because lots of people love humanity, but they don't like people. So we need to get into some volunteer work. I think you should have a real job first. Not that
Hmm.
politics isn't a real job, but you should have some sort of work experience. People that come right out of university and decide they want to be an MP, I always find them long learning curve when they get there. And start with things like school board. I think school
Hmm.
board's very important. It's a very difficult job because you're dealing with parents who have problems with their kids. They don't like what's happening in the schools. They have concerns. So they're usually heartbreakers. So
Hmm.
you start with those. And then my logical next step would have been to work to become a counselor, but I got sidetracked by Nando. And then Chrétien's campaign was so exciting. I got talked into running for that nomination, and away we went. But I would
Gosh.
suggest to people, learn your community, have a job, learn how to get along with people, and do some volunteer work first.
Yeah, and speaking of volunteer work, you mentioned being on the board of the food bank. People can volunteer for Mississauga Food Bank, right? They can easily
Yes,
do
they
that.
need help now. We've got 1 in 13 of our residents are using food banks right now.
Wow. And you recently declared it an emergency. Food security is an emergency in the city. So what's your vision, your plan to help improve that situation?
Well, we've already done it. I do a fundraiser every year. I raise about 250,000, and I dole it out in smaller amounts to smaller groups that aren't. They
Hmm.
don't have the big food banks in their neighborhoods. I do breakfast programs. I do checks to some of the high schools that have kids with food insecurity that the schools know about. So I do that. That's a small effort.
Hmm.
I also lobbied hard at the region because that's our
Hmm.
social service branch to put 2.5 to 3 million in our budget to assist them. And I don't know. We do a big food drive. We did it this year. We raised over $800,000 the mayor's food drive for
Oh wow.
Thanksgiving,
Yep.
and I'm helping the food bank put together a little plan where all the people who are getting their $200 checks from the province and $200 checks from the feds that really don't need $200 to
Yes.
sign the back of it and send it to the food bank. So we're working
Oh
on that
great.
little program right now.
Which is awesome. You mentioned Nav Bhatia as a business person in Mississauga, running the Hyundai dealerships, and very successful. He's homegrown here. He's supporting the city of Mississauga. Are there any other entrepreneurs who you see really, putting their foot forward, supporting the city and the growth and the people?
I've found the Lakeview group that are building down on Lakeview. It's a big group. They're very good. They
Hmm.
put $100,000 into my project to reproduce an Avro Arrow, which is going to go on a
Oh,
pedestal up in Malton, where it was originally built and test flown. They have pledged $100,000 a year to up to their 10 years for $1 million for the new hospice we're building for people who are in their last few moments on earth, but also they reach out to families of kids whose moms have died of cancer and so forth. So
mm,
we have a lot of developers or business people on that level that give back to the city. And everybody knows who they are and they all tap them for various things.
yeah,
They never say no. But yeah, we've got that's of course, the MBOT is full of the smaller business guys, and they're very productive and work hard. We've got a good business community here.
that's
But
great.
the big guys are like Nav Bhatia. He's quite obsessed with basketball. So if you want money from Nav, you have to make it worthwhile. He pays for women's leagues, basketball leagues, particularly with Muslim women that
Hmm.
they like to play with the hijab on and feel comfortable, and he subsidizes them. I've been to a couple of their banquets. So no, he's not actually homegrown. He came from India as
Yeah,
a young man
yeah.
and started in Malton. He rented a basement apartment in
Oh,
Malton.
Malton. Okay,
So,
that's where you got to start in Canada.
so
Okay.
he's a wonderful success story.
Oh, absolutely. He's a wonderful success story. He's incredibly positive. He's definitely helping to grow the people in the city. Another thing to look forward to as well, I think we're going to be having the biggest hospital in Canada, I think, shortly, right? As
Yes,
the extension takes place. Can you maybe talk more about that, Carolyn?
that's 950 units. It's going to have all kinds of specialties. It's going to serve 1.2 million people,
Wow.
which we don't have 1.2 million people in Mississauga. So I'm giving the premier a little bit of a hard time. All the hospitals in Toronto are built strictly with provincial money.
Hmm.
As soon as you get outside of Toronto, you get told you have to put in 10% of the cost, which for us would be 500 million. And so far, we've sort of folded our arms and jutted our lower jaws out and said, no, we're not doing it. We can't afford it this year or next year. So it's going to be exciting. I think it's well on its way. We just had an auditor's report from the province that said it's already 4 billion over cost
Oh.
estimates. So that means the 500 million would go higher, and
Hmm.
we're just not prepared to do that yet, if ever, because if Toronto can get their hospitals built for free, or not free, but with no cost to the municipality, I don't know why we're being charged and people in Halton are being charged. But this being the largest one, and it's going to be a large area hospital,
Hmm.
we think the province should be paying for it.
You mentioned you were watching Downton Abbey, that being one of your favorite shows. What about books? What are your favorite books right now that you're reading or have
I
read?
don't read any fictional books at all right now. I get
Okay.
my fix on fiction from watching Netflix. But I read, if you look at my bookshelves, it's mostly politicians' books that have been
Okay.
written. Yeah, I like reading autobiographies.
Awesome. I'm trying to think of something that we can close out with. What would you attribute that landslide success in June? So many people voting for you in Mississauga. What do you attribute that to at the end of the day?
I attribute it to being well known. I think some people just recognize the name and they go, "Yeah, I know her." I probably served in one capacity or another everyone in Mississauga north of the Queenie, so I'm a familiar figure. I think I've always been brutally honest. At times, it's brutal, and people like that. They don't like the smarmy kind of press release type politicians.
Standard politician talk,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it wasn't really a landslide. I had some formidable opponents from council, but I was the only one that gave up my council seat to run. So
Hmm.
I didn't have a fallback position. I think people
Yeah.
respected that as well. And I did that for two reasons. It was either I wanted to win or I was done. But also, it would have cost another 500. I'm trying to remember what it would have cost. Another bundle to do another by election right after in Ward 5. And I didn't think that was fair either, because the Ward 5 people would have been without representation for the 4 years of the first campaign, 4 months of the first campaign, and then probably another 60 days. So I just, all in all, rolled it together and said, I'm not doing that. So I think that got some votes. I lost some votes because I didn't do all the all candidates meetings. I'm sure I did. But I had a couple of opponents that were doing those nice little videos where they clip something and put it beside something else, and the two things shouldn't be together, and it made me sound like a dork.
Out of
So I said, no,
context,
I'm
yeah.
I'm not doing that anymore. So that instead, I did probably 4 group sessions a day of
Hmm.
50 or 60 people, community meetings, and I did that for the whole time and
Hmm.
got to know a lot of people. And I think that's more impressive than flipping on a debate. I would next time do debates, but I would suggest instead of about 30 of them, which they had, and much better control in them, maybe 3 done by reputable groups. And I'd be happy to participate. But this last one was a bit rough.
Well, I wish you the best of success. You have amazing ideas. I'm looking forward to seeing them being implemented. It was a pleasure to meet you, Mayor Parrish. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Robin. And I've got to give credit to the council that we've got right now. They're very cooperative and very excited and very supportive. And a lot of new people on council this term. So the team's working well together.
That's great. That's exciting. All positive. Thank you very much.
And thank you for voting for me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks,
Okay.
Mayor.
Thanks, Robin.